Good morning, students. Our today's topic in the subject of chemistry O levels is speed of reaction. And this is the first lecture on the topic of speed of reaction. So concentrate yourself. This is a technical topic. A lot of technicalities and concepts are involved in this lecture. So we are going to start. Concentrate now. The first thing that we are going to read in this lecture, speed of reaction, is Coulomb theory. So a note on the Coulomb theory is normally required to write in the paper, and it contains normally 2 to 3 marks. So this is important part. So concentrate yourself. We are going to start. Coulomb theory states that a chemical reaction occurs when reactant particles collide with one another. So this is the first condition for any chemical reaction to occur, that reactant particles collide with each other. So without collision, there will be no chemical reaction. So this is the first condition. Second, not all collisions will result in the formation of the product. So this is the second condition. Although the particles collide with one another, but if the collision is not successful, and the conditions for a successful collision is the particles have enough energy to overcome the activation energy, and the particles collide in the proper orientation. So there are two conditions for the successful collision, that is activation energy must be overcome and orientation must be proper. So listen now again. Second condition is not all collisions will result in the formation of the product. This is why, because the all collisions are not successful collisions. Number 3 condition, a collision is effective only when the reactant particles have enough energy to overcome the activation energy of the reaction, and when the particles collide in the proper orientation. So these are two conditions for successful collision. So what is activation energy? This definition we will read later in the lecture. So moving ahead, in order for a reaction to proceed, the activation energy of the reaction must be overcome. So here is a diagram to show the activation energy. So try to understand now. Activation energy is like a barrier. For example, you are going towards some destination, and in the way there is a barrier. So if you overcome the barrier, then you will be successful to reach your destination. The same thing applies here. This is the destination and this is the starting point. So the reactants wants to reach this destination, and in between there is a barrier. So reactants have to overcome the barrier to reach the destination. So look now, in order for the reaction to proceed, the activation energy of the reaction must be overcome. So this barrier should be overcome to reach there. Then reactants will be converted into products. Here is the definition of the activation energy. The minimum amount of the energy needed to make the reaction take place, usually abbreviated by EA. A stand for activation, E stand for energy. So this is the minimum amount of the energy needed to make the reaction take place. If energy level is lower than this, then that barrier, activation energy, will not be overcome. So this is a minimum energy level that is required to overcome the activation energy. Next definition is transition state. The midway point in the chemical reaction, usually abbreviated by TS. S stand for state and T stand for transition. So this is the midway point in the chemical reaction. So when the battle is exactly in the middle point, that state is called transition state. The midway point in the chemical reaction, usually abbreviated by TS. Next definition is heat of reaction. The amount of the energy change between the reactants and products. So listen and understand. The energy of the reactants is not equal to the energy of the products. So this change in the energy of the reactants and products is called heat of reaction. So read again the amount of energy change between the reactants and the products. Next thing which we are going to read is speed of reaction. The speed of a reaction measures how fast the reaction takes place. So this is actually the it measures how fast the reaction takes place. This is called speed of reaction. And the rate of chemical reaction, the definition of the rate of chemical reaction is the progress of the reaction in unit time. So more the progress in unit time, more will be the rate of the chemical reaction. Less the progress of the reaction in unit time, less will be the rate of reaction. So rate of reaction is the progress of the reaction in unit time. And here is a formula for reaction rate: change in the concentration of the reactants divided by time taken. So as the chemical reaction proceed, the concentration of the reactants get lesser. So at any particular time, if we put the concentration of the reactants in the numerator divided by the time taken to reach that state, will give us the reaction rate. According to Coulomb theory, a chemical reaction occurs when reactant particles collide with each other. Not all collisions are effective, that is, will result in a successful reaction. So I have told you earlier that even then the particles are colliding, this is not the guarantee. All collisions are not successful. For a collision to be successful, there are two conditions, and conditions are here. Number one, sufficient energy to overcome the activation energy of the reaction, and number two, the correct orientation. So these are the two conditions. If these two conditions are fulfilled, then the collision will be a successful collision. Hence, the speed of the reaction depends on the frequency of the effective collision between the reacting particles. So this is a very important thing, students. It depends on the frequency of the effective collision. So you know frequency. If more the frequency, if particles are colliding with each other more frequently, so frequency is the number of the collision per unit time. If there is more collision per unit time, it means frequency is more, then the rate of the reaction will be more. And if the frequency is lesser or smaller, then the rate of the reaction will be lesser. The greater the number of the effective collision per unit time, the faster the speed of the reaction. A fast chemical reaction is one in which the reactants change rapidly into the products. Such a reaction has a high speed of the reaction because reactants are rapidly changing into products. So reactants will be converted rapidly. Reactants will be converted rapidly into the product when successful collisions are more, frequency is more, and activation energy with low speed or rate takes a long time to change the reactants into the products. So this is very important. If there is a low speed or rate, definitely reactants will take more time to change into the product. Determination of the reaction speed. So this is very, very important. This is actually a topic of your paper number 4, chemistry, that is called alternate to practical. So there are three methods to determine the rate of the chemical reaction. So concentrate. Determination of the chemical speed. Three experimental methods can be used to determine the speed of the reaction. They are: number one, measuring time for reaction to be completed. So this is number one. A chemical reaction which take less time to complete definitely will be called a fast chemical reaction, and a chemical reaction which take more time to complete definitely will be called a slow chemical reaction. Number two method is measuring quantity of the products formed over a fixed time intervals. So this is the second method. So in a given fixed time, if more products are formed, if the quantity formed of products is more, definitely that reaction will be called a fast chemical reaction. But if in a given fixed time, the quantity of the product formed of the products is lesser, definitely that reaction will be called a slow chemical reaction. Number three method is measuring quantity of the reactant left over a fixed time interval. So definitely this is the third method. So a chemical reaction is a process in which reactant particles collide with one another, react with one another to transform into the products. So if in a given fixed interval of time, the quantity of the reactant left over is more, it means less products will be formed, because still a lot of products are a lot of reactants are still there. So it means that reaction will be called a slow reaction. But if in a given interval of time, if there is a less quantity of the reactants is left over, it means more products will be formed. So that reaction will be called a fast chemical reaction. So these are three methods which can be used to determine the speed of the reaction. Graphs and rates of the reaction. We can use graphs to measure the rate of the reaction at any given time. The slope or gradient tells us how quickly the reaction was going at that time. So look at now, we will see the steeper the slope, the faster the reaction. So here is a chemical reaction. Here is the graph of a chemical reaction which is proceeding. So that starts from the initial point 0 when there was no reaction, and then it proceeds, then the graph is formed like this. So if you look at the graph, in this portion the slope is steeper, so the reaction is fastest at the start. But as the reaction proceeds, at this point you can see the slope is less steeper. The reaction is slowing down here, because slowing down. Okay, and after some more time, the graph will become of this shape. Here at this stage, reaction has finished. No more products is formed. So these are different stages in a chemical reaction, and we can determine the rate of chemical reaction through a graph. Next thing which we are going to read is factors affecting speed of reaction. So these are factors which affect the speed of reaction. Number one, concentration. Number two, pressure. Number three, particle size. Number four, temperature. Number five, catalyst. Number six, presence of light. And number seven, type of bond involved. So these are the factors which affect the rate of the chemical reaction. And now we will read the effect of these factors one by one in detail.